starts now with a breaking news alert.
Good morning, everybody. Hawaii is staying on high alert right now, despite that tsunami threat being downgraded. Let's take a live look at Honolulu, where tsunami alerts were issued in other states as well, like California, where actually minutes ago a 3.6-foot tsunami wave was recorded in Crescent City. And in French Polynesia, an island in the South Pacific, they saw waves as tall as 13 feet. All of this coming after an 8.8 magnitude quake hit Russia's eastern coast. To give you an idea of how powerful that is tied for the sixth strongest earthquake ever recorded. The first waves hit Russia and Japan, where nearly 2 million people were evacuated. Since that quake hit last night, the tsunami warning was downgraded to an advisory. Hawaii officials still want to monitor those conditions, though, before they can give the all clear. Ashley Barossi joining us now here for Local 4 Live. And Ashley, when things like this happen, obviously those alerts have to go out because those tsunami waves can travel incredibly fast.
Oh, I mean, up to like 500 miles per hour they can be moving. So yeah, you have to take those alerts very seriously. And I know you put that quake in perspective, saying it was the sixth strongest, but when you think about the Richter scale, 1 to 10, I mean, 8.8 is almost as
a 10,
strong,
right?
as it can get. And so here's another live look that we have out there. And of course, flooding will become a concern in some spots, even under that advisory. So the great news is that that warning that was in Hawaii has been downgraded to an advisory, but we're still dealing with the advisory from that. So that earthquake tracker, once again, that was right off the east coast of Russia. But here's a look at Hawaii. So the orange that you see there along the coastline of the islands there, that's the advisory that remains in effect. Up towards Alaska, well, you still have the advisory there, and then that stretches down along the west coast, so for portions of Oregon down through the California coastline too, as far south as close to the LA area. So that's the earthquake and tsunami tracker. But let's talk about the science behind this, because a tsunami occurs when an earthquake has happened, pushing energy upward and expanding in all directions. So that then has impact with the water, the open ocean. And offshore, there's a series of waves that begin to build, pulling water actually off the coastline in some of these locations that we've been talking about. So that's called a drawback, where the water recedes from the coast. But then what happens after that, just before inundation, waves start to get larger near the coast as that energy is forced upward. So that shallow seafloor will end up seeing the larger wave. And then the inundation occurs where multiple waves begin to crash on shore, which will spread well inland. And that's why you hear that folks not only need to be taking shelter on higher lands, but you have to push farther inland too because of those flooding concerns. So as Nick was just mentioning, I mean, the distance of these tsunamis travel hundreds of miles up to speeds over 500 miles per hour. So that's why you're seeing these alerts stretching across a huge portion of the ocean. Now, some of those controlling factors, of course, the magnitude of the earthquake, the depth of that earthquake, and just the type of earthquake that we're talking about. So just to give you kind of a little perspective of just what occurs with the tsunami. But the silver lining in all this as we're waking up this morning is that we have seen that downgrade in Hawaii. And I just want folks to remember that, swimming is not safe. Even if you're only getting 1 to 2 feet tsunami waves, I mean, that's going to impact the currents along the coastline. And so we want everyone to be safe. But you also feel for folks that are traveling to these destination places, too, spending lots of money for these possibly once-in-a-lifetime vacations.
Right. And as you mentioned earlier, people that don't have a good way to get in a car and just flee and get out of the area.
Exactly. Or just have familiarity with the area. Like, where do you go?
Right.
I mean, GPS sure can help you, but you have to know where to go.
It doesn't know where the tsunami area is going
exactly.
to be.
Right. Yeah.
So in the past couple of hours, we've seen these warnings downgraded to advisories. What's your best guess on when you think those advisories might expire?
It's really hard to say.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll continue to monitor the waves. I mean, that occurred last night, and so really within less than a 12-hour span, we've seen that downgrade. So I guess my best guess would be hopefully by the end of the day. But some of these alerts stretch for the next few days. Originally, that warning was taking us all the way into next week on our map. So there's going to be impacts or implications from this for probably a couple days, but hopefully you start to see a lot of that subside as the day progresses.
Okay, Ashley, thank you so much. Let's turn to some breaking news now here at home. This time from Detroit's east side. Gratiot is now back open near French Road after a car crashed into a building, killing at least 2 people, and 2 others were also hurt. No word yet on what may have caused that crash, but we will keep an eye on this and get some updates throughout the day here. So much more to talk about here on Local 4 Live. That mass stabbing in Traverse City and the shooting in Midtown New York still on many of our minds. People getting caught off guard in a sudden and violent situation. We're going to talk to our crime and safety expert, Darnell Blackburn, about how you can stay on your toes. Maybe not have to ruin your day, but just have some kind of situational awareness. Also, finding the answer to an infamous mystery that all started right here in Detroit 50 years ago today. The disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa. We've got a slice of a documentary we've been working on, looking back on his disappearance, and the Detroit Lions have been getting back to the grip before their big pregame tomorrow. Hobie Artigue is going to share his 3 big takeaways from training camp so far. Let's get to our headlines on your Wednesday morning. Today, one of the 3 men charged in the killing of Oakland County Deputy Bradley Reckling will be sentenced. Marquise Goins is due in court in about an hour. His sentencing comes 1 day after the man accused of killing Reckling pled guilty to first-degree murder. The northbound lanes of the Southfield Freeway were closed for hours last night after a man was hit while changing his tire. Now, this happened about 7 o'clock near the I-96 interchange. Police say the man's wife was inside of the car when this crash happened. The man was alert and breathing when emergency workers got there. Police believe the driver who hit him was impaired. That driver was arrested and taken to a local hospital for a blood test. The victim still in serious condition. Well, as we mentioned, it is one of the greatest mysteries ever in Metro Detroit. Today marking 50 years since Hoffa disappeared. The Teamsters leader was last seen in the parking lot of the Bloomfield Hills restaurant Marcus Red Fox. It's on Telegraph, and now it's in Andiamos. On July 30th, 1982, Hoffa was meeting Detroit mob enforcer Anthony Tony Jack Gioloni and the mobster Tony Provenzano. 6 witnesses say Hoffa was seen getting into a maroon Mercury sedan, then he vanished. In the 50 years that followed, there have been so many theories about what happened to him. So tonight, 8 p.m. right here on Local 4 and Local 4 Plus, we're going to dive into new theories about this hour-long documentary. In it, we're going to give you a sneak peek right now.
March 10, 1973. At one time, Jimmy Hoffa could have shut this country down.
As the union grew, his power grew, and as the power in the union in Hoffa grew, the mafia grew. It worked really well until it didn't.
It was always known that you could get Teamster money from the pension fund here in Detroit for projects if they were big enough, as long as you were willing to do business with certain people.
I think the allure that someone could go missing that was high profile.
Because there's no body, the reason that the mythology keeps on building and feeding on itself is because there's no body. And I had a member of organized crime in Detroit say to me in the years before he died, if we had to do it all over again, we would have left him in the middle of Telegraph Road.
Do I know what happened to Jimmy Hoffa? Yes, I do.
But the government knows who done it, and I know who done it, but I ain't telling.
It was the perfect crime. It really was. It was the perfect crime. They were making it so everybody thought something different.
If I was guessing, he probably was cremated.
Now, I'm much more confident as to who did it, why, and what happened to Jimmy Hoffa.
Well, again, that backstory documentary airing tonight at 8 o'clock on Local 4. We're going to chat with the Local 4 photojournalist who produced this documentary and the crime reporter who has been investigating this for years, coming up here on Local 4 Live. A Shelby Township company celebrating 40 years in business this year. After starting as a small company in Canada, VDG has grown into a $100 million company with 200 employees. And while that might not sound like too much, the work they do revolutionized something. I guarantee it's something you've used before. Conveyor belts are in almost every industry: package facilities, food processing, the airport. These things are everywhere. But 40 years ago, a man from Greece thought he could make something better, so he did, changing the design completely, and now they're one of the biggest names in the industry. Inside this factory in Shelby Township, a finely tuned process that changed the conveyor belt world.
I came from Greece when I was 14 years old and came to Canada. So I started in Canada, but my goal was to expand to the U.S. market.
Alex Canaris is the president of Vandergraaf, or VDG. He started the company in Canada when he found what he called a fundamental problem with conveyor belt systems. The motor is on the outside, susceptible to wear and tear, a hiding place for bacteria in food processing applications, and just inefficient. So Alex moved the motor, the gearbox, everything inside the drum itself.
Our newest designs, they're 80,000 hours without maintenance, so it's about 12 years. So it's safe to use because nobody can get hurt on the outside.
His design was a hit, and operations soon expanded into the U.S., with most of the operations in Shelby Township and 100% of the product made by them.
I didn't want to work with any subcontractors.
Okay.
I want to make everything here.
Okay.
So this way we control quality, we control delivery time, and we control the customer needs.
There is a downside to not outsourcing anything, though: increased manufacturing costs that get passed on to the clients. But Alex says the clients are willing to pay.
If you have, let's say, a line of Tyson Foods that the product has gone down, it can cost them up to about $100,000 to $200,000 per hour for no running. So they say, okay, well, if they buy my product and my product is going to reduce their downtime, so
it's actually a savings.
It's actually a savings.
Now, 40 years later, the VDG design is everywhere.
Our biggest clients is the food processing facilities, like Tyson, Pilgrims. They're about 8 to 10% of our business.
Okay.
Then we have Postal Parcel, so the U.S. Post Office, Federal Express, UPS, Amazon, Walmart, Target, airports.
They also make massive systems for coal mining. So it's safe to say that if there's a conveyor system running, there's a very good chance that you're a part of it somewhere in the country,
we're
even in the
part of
world.
it. Yeah. For me, when I go to the airport and American Airlines jet pulls in and I see my motors bringing suitcases out to the conveyor, I feel proud.
Well, so we bring you this story for two reasons. First, it's just pretty cool. But second, as part of our Trade Up series, showing you jobs in the skilled trades industry that need to be filled. And VDG has plenty of those. Tonight on Local 4 News at 5:45, we're going to take you back inside of that plant as they explain the training they will do right there on the floor. And right after the break, we're going to continue this conversation about the importance of skilled trades and the boost of manufacturing in Macomb County with the county economic team. We'll be back in just a bit. I do want to continue the conversation on the importance of skilled trades and businesses like VDG and the growth of manufacturing, especially in Macomb County. Vicki Rowinski is the director of Macomb County Planning and Economic Development. Vicki, thank you so much. First of all, VDG, as I'm sure you're well aware, is expanding and opening another facility in Shelby Township. What is it about that area in Macomb County that seems to be like a manufacturing hub with this boom happening right now?
Absolutely. This is like the question I love to answer because it really does highlight the assets we've got in Macomb County. Our manufacturing prowess really looks at the history with both automotive and defense, aerospace. What I love about the VDG story is that they're industry agnostic. They actually hit a lot of our targeted industries where, you heard about some of the product lines they provide. And it is in food, it's in ag, it's in energy, as well as distribution and automation.
Yeah. So we have seen between, the 8 Mile line all the way up towards Armada and further, just manufacturing facilities popping up everywhere. Has this been a strategic plan with the county to attract more manufacturing? And what is that plan? How are you getting businesses to come to you? I know they're growing in Oakland and Wayne counties as well, but it seems like there's more growth and new business in Macomb County in the manufacturing sector.
Yes, we truly are a magnet when we talk about manufacturing, and it really gets down to the workforce. The ability for these businesses to come here and grow and find that workforce that really is contingent on making sure that they've got a product that they can get out to their customer. We have 5 specific targeted industries in Macomb County. The bread and butter is automotive. It's pretty big and significant for us. But we also remember a time back in the 08-09 recession when automotive wasn't doing well. And so our strategy has been diversification, looking at how do you take a manufacturer who was 100% automotive and look at the other targeted industries. And some of them include our aerospace and defense, a huge presence here due to the anchor of the Detroit Arsenal, as well as Selfridge. Automation and robotics, this is where VDG fits in. They've got equipment, manufacturing processes that go into major assembly systems. The other targeted industry is our food and ag. When you look at Macomb County and our makeup, we are heavy manufacturing, but if you go north, you're hitting our farms. And it's really great to see even our farms adapt that equipment and looking at how do they automate their processing. The other area is distribution. We have 2 major Amazon facilities in Macomb County. They're strategically located here because they want to get that product out to their customer. And then when you look at the big picture, it's making sure these businesses have multiple growth sectors, not just eggs in one basket.
Yeah. Not to put you on the spot, Vicki, but do you have any numbers in terms of the kind of growth you've seen over the past maybe 10 or 15 years?
Yes, and we do look at the numbers as well. Getting back to those 5 targeted industries, what we see is tremendous growth happening, especially in the area of automation and robotics. In fact, when we look between 2020 and 2030, we're looking at a 6% growth in that particular sector. Where we're seeing also major growth is a 40% growth increase in that world of distribution and logistics. And we're talking about major footprints. The Amazon facility in Shelby Township as well is over 1 million square feet. We've also have one in Sterling Heights. But there's a lot that goes on behind the processing of these facilities where you've got the automation, you've got product hitting the streets, getting out to the consumer. And then, getting back to that food and ag, it is not just about farmers producing food. It is about the whole processing, getting that product out to the public, whether it's locally here in Macomb County or a distribution that is nationwide.
Right. So I'm sure you've seen our series, the Trade Up series, focusing on skilled trades jobs that are certainly in demand in the workforce right now. What's your advice to folks who are watching this and seeing places like VDG or any other facility in any one of our Tri-County areas and saying, I do want to get involved, I want to change my career, or this is the right path for me? What do you say when they say, I want a skilled trades job?
Absolutely. And I have to commend a lot to our partnership with Macomb Community College. They are our partner at our table when we are talking to these manufacturers and they're purchasing new equipment. Getting those individuals upskilled or trained for these new jobs really does require that educational component, that workforce component. And so having that partnership with our college has been phenomenal. When we look at the robust ability for these individuals to get out there, learn and train on the job, as well as, looking at the new equipment that's hitting the lines where it's pretty high tech, pretty smart. And so for us, we love that some of our students go off to college, but really the jobs are waiting for them here in Macomb County.
Yeah, right. Vicki, thank you so much for your time today, and congratulations, because there is a boom in Macomb County. There is a new plant facility opening up on every corner every time I drive through.
Yes, there is. That's our pride and joy.
There you go. All right, take care, Vicki. Thank you much. Well, it is another warm and muggy start to our Wednesday. Some scattered showers could cool us off. Ashley is going to track where those might be heading when we come back.
Now, forewarned weather with Exact Track 4D.
One more day, just one more day with this heat and humidity, and then we finally will have some relief, though we will be contending with some rain later on today and through a good chunk of your Thursday. But even the cooler conditions that last through the weekend will not come with wet weather the entire weekend. So we're feeling much better by Friday through the weekend as that drier, less humid air mass will be building in. But in the meantime, here we go again. We have temperatures topping out in the mid to upper 80s today and feeling like low 90s when you factor in just that moisture in the air. And we have a very close eye on a system to our west that's inching eastward as the day progresses, and that brings us that rain chance. But in the meantime, it's still the western half of the U.S. dealing with a heat risk today, and much more prominent as you get south of the state line, working your way down into Florida with an extreme heat risk in portions of Florida, and then that major risk going up the eastern seaboard towards New York and Boston. And that does travel as far southwest as portions of Texas. But your forecast planner for today, we rise into the mid to upper 80s, and we'll have increasing clouds as the day goes on. So at least you're not baking in the sun as those temperatures are rising. We have a chance for a spotty kind of isolated downpour around the dinner hour, but I think our better chance for more numerous showers and storms will be after sunset. And we're going to take that into tomorrow, where that rain becomes much more widespread by early Thursday morning. So really the rain arrives late, but we're just not ruling out an evening bubble up. And you see that right here around 6:30. Hard to pinpoint that it would be exactly here with this model data, but you get the picture. Something very isolated that turns a bit more numerous by 10, 11 o'clock, and then boom, widespread by the time we get to about 5 a.m. tomorrow. Heaviest rain will likely be Washtenaw, Wayne County on south. So this likely will impact your morning drive tomorrow. So maybe set that alarm clock a couple minutes earlier, or just plan to not snooze that alarm clock. But we will have rain stretching all the way up towards the thumb region. So the rest of us in southeastern Michigan don't dodge the rain altogether. But this does start to subside a bit, becoming much lighter, more of a sprinkle or two, getting into the mid to late afternoon hours before we dry things out come Thursday evening. So it's a day game at Comerica Park, and we will likely be in the 80s with the drier weather, humid but drier, and we will be in the peak heat of the day throughout game time. More clouds increasing, but at least we dodge the rain. High temperatures, check this out, average 83, and we are falling into the upper 70s on your Thursday and Friday. So it's been some time since we talked about falling below average. I don't think most of us are complaining. It's a nice little break from the oppressive heat and humidity, and then we rebound to more of that seasonal territory heading into the weekend. But if you are heading to Canton, Ohio tomorrow, 8 o'clock kickoff for the Lions taking on the Chargers, well, we also could be dodging some showers and storms in the area. So there's the chance. Come tomorrow evening, it's going to be warm and muggy there with the lingering rain chances. 70s falling into the 60s by game's end. So hopefully that doesn't impact the game. But bringing it back close to home, we'll be in the low 80s with sunshine on your Saturday and Sunday. And then we start to tick back upward, mid 80s in the forecast for early next week.
Ashley, thank you. From the headlines coming out of New York and Traverse City this week, you may feel worried or tense just going out and about and trying to live your life. We're going to talk about personal safety when you're out and about in public with our crime and safety expert, John L. Blackburn, after this break. I'm Nick Monticelli with the Local 4 update. 2 people are dead after a crash. A car crashed into a building on Detroit's east side. This happened at Gratiot and French just about 4 o'clock this morning. The victim's family tells us a total of 4 people were in that car. We're working to find out how the other 2 people are doing, but we were told they went to a hospital. Gratiot is now back open for traffic. And we've got much more on the way on Local 4 Plus. In light of recent violence we've seen in the headlines, we do want to talk about personal safety, just being more aware of what's happening around you during everyday activities. Plus, we are getting ready to premiere our Jimmy Hoffa documentary. We're talking about how we put it all together 50 years after his disappearance. We're also talking Lions right before that big Hall of Fame game in Canton tomorrow, which, by the way, is right here on Local 4. And Ashley has a look at your forecast in just a few minutes. Keep it right here on Local 4.
Local 4 News starts now with a breaking news alert.
Well, we're back here on Local 4 Live with the tsunami alerts covering the West Coast. Minutes ago, a 3.6-foot wave was recorded in Crescent City, California. This after that 8.8 magnitude earthquake in Russia. And just because these waves are coming from across the Pacific, experts say that does not mean they lose any speed.
The traveling speed of a tsunami pretty much is it's controlled by the water depths of the ocean, which we say bathymetry, and they travel around like 700 kilometers per hour, which is like jet plane. And it's usually very small in the deep ocean. It's pretty quiet in the deep ocean, but once the tsunami wave reach the shallow water, and then the energy release will be in the forms of wave height, and the water will pile up and cause severe damage along the coastline.
Well, Japan also got hit by a tsunami wave and evacuated 2 million people. Colombia also under evacuations with their tsunami warning as well. Well, we're learning much more about the man charged in the mass stabbing incident inside of a Walmart in Traverse City. 42-year-old Bradford Gilly facing several charges for the weekend incident, including terrorism. Police say he has a history of mental illness, and his brother, Shane, is speaking out for the first time, saying his family has been working to get Bradford help for the past 28 years, trying to find a long-term placement for his brother at a mental health facility.
After 28 years of witnessing his ups and downs and his disconnection to reality, and talking about whether it be alien abductions or, chickens being spayed or neutered or something like that. Like, what are you talking about, man? This is a true insanity case.
Now, Shane says he plans on writing a letter to his brother in jail when he had the right words to say. Gilly is due back in court next week. Police are also trying to understand the motive behind a shooting in Midtown New York that 4 people were killed in, including an off-duty officer. The suspect is 27-year-old Shane Tamara from Las Vegas. Investigators say he had a history of mental illness. They found a note on him, and police say the note suggests he was targeting the NFL's corporate offices in the building. According to NBC, the note expressed his frustration that his mental health issues might be linked to playing football in high school. Investigators are looking into whether this is a reason why he targeted that building that housed those NFL offices. Well, we want to bring in our crime and safety expert, Darnell Blackburn, at this point, because both of these situations, Darnell, were random attacks. Walmart certainly was. New York may have been more of a targeted attack, but there were random victims involved in that one. And it's difficult because when there is a random attack, your situational awareness is thrown off because you weren't expecting anything at all.
Absolutely.
So is there anything we can do to try to better prepare ourselves, or is this just one of those things that is a thing now, which is awful to say?
Unfortunately, it's a thing that happens, but you can prepare yourself.
Okay.
And you start off with planning, just having a plan together. So the concept of surviving these mass attacks, whether it's shooting, stabbing, is run, hide, fight. Run, hide, fight. But in order to run, hide, and fight, you have to prepare. So how you prepare is you think about the exits. You know the entry points and exit points in a room, in a venue. You identify those so you know if you can run and get away quickly. The other part of that in the planning session is if you do have to fight, think about what you can use, whether it be a chair, a heavy stapler, a cell phone, something that you can access. And if it's a situation where, you have to hide, look for places that may be secured, like a custodial closet that has a lock on it. So these are things that you have to do, and you just have to be hyper vigilant and not let your guard down, because as we see, these things can happen randomly, they can happen targeted, and so being prepared by just mentally telling yourself those things would really help.
Sometimes, all the time, when I go to a restaurant, I usually eye to see where the exits are, and I like to sit facing the front door so I can see something coming. Sometimes my friends think I'm just crazy and I'm over the top.
No, that's kind of it's a cop thing that we do, cops do too, Nick. And because of your experiences, you understand that things happen. As a reporter, you've seen, unfortunately, things happen. And so it's not over the top. It's just being safe. And if you do have to have your back to the door, you want to make sure somebody else is watching out. The other thing I want to point out is if you see something that looks odd, or it doesn't look, somebody is acting strangely, call the police. That's why, police are there. As a former police officer, I always wish people would call and not just let things go, because you never know what would happen. And the last thing is if you think something could be a thing, then assume it is.
Okay.
If you think you're hearing gunshots,
assume they are.
Assume they are. Don't tell yourself, oh no, that's not, I'm just hearing things. No, make the assumption and be safe.
I wanted to ask too, in the Walmart case, it's probably safe to say at this point that there would have been more attacks if some Good Samaritans didn't step in. What's that line between trying to save yourself and run or trying to take down an attacker and prevent more loss?
In that situation, I can't really say. I can tell you this, that you don't bring a knife to a gunfight. And thankfully, a CPL or holder had
the opposite. He brought a gun to a knife fight.
Yep, absolutely, and was able to subdue that person. And I mean, I would tell people all the time, protect yourself and your family. That is your number one priority, yourself and your family. And if you can step in, I wouldn't, I'm not gonna not advise it, but just think about your family, your well-being, because if you're not safe, you can't help anyone else.
And I think the Walmart Traverse City situation is a little bit different because that suspect had a smaller knife. So I think there was some, and I've been through the trainings where the police train you on the split seconds decisions that you have to make, and even a knife can get you much faster than you think, right? But some people, were attacking him with shopping carts and trying to nip his heels, and I think maybe that changed it a little bit because it's not. I'm not going to say it's not dangerous, but not as dangerous as a gun. You have a little bit, small, very small, but you have a little bit of kind of cushion between you and the weapon.
You think you do.
Right.
You think you do.
Right.
The big thing was attacking with shopping carts, having something that would be a
gives
barrier,
you distance.
exactly,
Yeah,
and
right,
distance, and
right.
that was brilliant to do and to use to get to that situation. But those they happen so fast, so fast. Those knife attacks. So having that something as a barrier or to use as a something to slow this down was really key. And that person having the firearm.
Because I do remember being in a simulator and thinking it's a knife. I've got more time. And then in the simulation, I was killed because I thought I had more time.
Absolutely. So keep that in mind in these situations.
Yeah. Okay, Darnell, thank you very much. Always appreciate your insight. Thank you much. Okay, a major project with our friends across the river may be hitting a speed bump, while we might have to wait just a little bit longer to cut the ribbon on the Gordie Howe Bridge. Welcome back to Local 4 Live. On Monday, we told you about a substance that's called kratom. It's a derivative known as 7-OH, and this one can be 40 times more potent than kratom itself, and it's easily accessible. Now, concerns are mounting. The Trump administration is calling for 7-OH to be classified as an illicit drug. Our Priya Mann has been closely following this story.
If 7-OH is reclassified, it would be a game changer because then 7-OH would be in the same category as heroin or ecstasy. Right now, you can get the kratom derivative at gas stations. It's unregulated, and now the FDA is paying close attention.
And they're marketed for children. They're gummy bears. They're bright colors. They're candy flavored. This is really a sinister industry.
The FDA wants the synthetic opioid known as 7-OH to be reclassified. The FDA says the drug, which is derived from the kratom plant, can be easily bought in gas stations, party stores, and vape shops. Care of Southeastern Michigan, a substance abuse prevention nonprofit, says many parents don't even know about kratom, let alone the more potent derivative.
With kratom, the potential for addiction is there. It's marketed as an herbal supplement, which sounds very safe, and many people don't know that herbal supplements are not regulated by the FDA.
Local law enforcement agencies, including Warren Police, are also pushing for change.
There have been studies to show that 7-OH usage is much like opioid usage. There are withdrawal symptoms consistent to it. And in some cases, fatalities across the nation have been linked to it.
Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy says it's time for the FDA to act.
Our agencies have been asleep at the wheel for all of these other crises. And now we're going to wake up and we're going to stop this before it starts.
And the scheduling process starts with an 8-factor analysis by various federal agencies looking at the risk and potential for abuse. Then the DEA would come in for those final stages to reclassify the compound as an illicit drug. Now, there has been a lot of attention paid to this story. We've been getting calls and emails in from viewers. Coming up on Monday, we're talking to a man who suffered from kratom addiction, and he has a message for parents. I'm Priya Mann, Local 4.
Priya, thank you. What an interesting story that very few know about. Well, we could get some relief from all of that heat. Ashley is going to come back and track the showers that could give us a much needed break. Welcome back to Local 4 Live. The opening of the Gordie Howe International Bridge might get pushed back until 2026. That's according to a recent report by S&P Global. Although construction is on track to finish, labor shortages linked to nearby industrial projects could push back the official opening. The Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority says the project is nearly complete with the main span already connected. Now here's Ashley with a look at your forecast.
Now, forewarned weather with Exact Track 4D.
One more day, just one more day with this heat and humidity, and then we finally will have some relief, though we will be contending with some rain later on today and through a good chunk of your Thursday. But even the cooler conditions that last through the weekend will not come with wet weather the entire weekend. So we're feeling much better by Friday through the weekend as that drier, less humid air mass will be building in. But in the meantime, here we go again. We have temperatures topping out in the mid to upper 80s today and feeling like low 90s when you factor in just that moisture in the air. And we have a very close eye on a system to our west that's inching eastward as the day progresses, and that brings us that rain chance. But in the meantime, it's still the western half of the U.S. dealing with a heat risk today, and much more prominent as you get south of the state line, working your way down into Florida with an extreme heat risk in portions of Florida, and then that major risk going up the eastern seaboard towards New York and Boston. And that does travel as far southwest as portions of Texas. But your forecast planner for today, we rise into the mid to upper 80s, and we'll have increasing clouds as the day goes on. So at least you're not baking in the sun as those temperatures are rising. We have a chance for a spotty kind of isolated downpour around the dinner hour, but I think our better chance for more numerous showers and storms will be after sunset. And we're going to take that into tomorrow, where that rain becomes much more widespread by early Thursday morning. So really the rain arrives late, but we're just not ruling out an evening bubble up. And you see that right here around 6:30. Hard to pinpoint that it would be exactly here with this model data, but you get the picture. Something very isolated that turns a bit more numerous by 10, 11 o'clock, and then boom, widespread by the time we get to about 5 a.m. tomorrow. Heaviest rain will likely be Washtenaw, Wayne County on south. So this likely will impact your morning drive tomorrow. So maybe set that alarm clock a couple minutes earlier, or just plan to not snooze that alarm clock. But we will have rain stretching all the way up towards the thumb region. So the rest of us in southeastern Michigan don't dodge the rain altogether. But this does start to subside a bit, becoming much lighter, more of a sprinkle or two, getting into the mid to late afternoon hours before we dry things out come Thursday evening. So it's a day game at Comerica Park, and we will likely be in the 80s with the drier weather, humid but drier, and we will be in the peak heat of the day throughout game time. More clouds increasing, but at least we dodge the rain. High temperatures, check this out, average 83, and we are falling into the upper 70s on your Thursday and Friday. So it's been some time since we talked about falling below average. I don't think most of us are complaining. It's a nice little break from the oppressive heat and humidity, and then we rebound to more of that seasonal territory heading into the weekend. But if you are heading to Canton, Ohio tomorrow, 8 o'clock kickoff for the Lions taking on the Chargers, well, we also could be dodging some showers and storms in the area. So there's the chance. Come tomorrow evening, it's going to be warm and muggy there with the lingering rain chances. 70s falling into the 60s by game's end. So hopefully that doesn't impact the game. But bringing it back close to home, we'll be in the low 80s with sunshine on your Saturday and Sunday. And then we start to tick back upward, mid 80s in the forecast for early next week.
Ashley, thank you. The Lions play their first preseason game tomorrow. Hobie Artigue has been at training camp almost every day since it started. He's going to share his 3 key takeaways from camp, including who may have a breakout year. Welcome back to Local 4 Live. No training camp for the Lions today as they head to Canton to play in tomorrow's Hall of Fame game, which is right here on Local 4, by the way. This is the first time we'll get to see some of the team in action ahead of the regular season. Hobie has been at training camp almost every single day for the practices over the last week and a half. He's sharing his 3 key takeaways from camp with the guys over on Detroit Sports Plus.
My biggest takeaway is just how fiery this team has been without letting it boil over. I mean, we've seen guys get tackled to the ground. They were popping without pads on. I mean, that's when Dan Campbell had to step in and say, all right, maybe we're going a little too hard right now. And you have to draw the line. And Kelvin Sheppard said earlier this week, you have to toe the line, but not cross it. I thought that was perfectly said for how this team is operating in training camp. We talked to Dan Campbell one-on-one earlier today. That's going to be in our pregame show coming up on Local 4 and Local 4 Plus a little bit later on this week as well. And he was like, yeah, it shows me that I have a mature group who knows what it's all about, and they feel a sense of urgency. They are not done. They know that they need to finish the job this season because they haven't the last 2
Question,
years.
do you think some of that fire is because the Lions feel a little bit disrespected? Like they just went 15-2.
I think
sure,
so,
they remember that last game.
Listen to the outside noise right now, because you can say that you put the blinders on and you're only focused on us. Khalif Raymond said he hasn't even looked at the schedule. He didn't even know who they were playing in week 1. They have the blinders on, but you know that they're hearing some of that external noise. Yeah. And I think that's where you hear the season of reckoning come from, because they know the urgency. You don't have to tell them twice what the expectation should be. And the line that I've heard from Campbell, from Decker said it earlier too in training camp, the standard is the standard. That's what has been said. That's the biggest thing. My second takeaway is not only watching Jameson Williams, but hearing Jameson Williams' teammates talk about how much better Jameson Williams looks in training camp this year.
Better how?
Like
okay.
Route running, like what are we talking?
That's what it is, because they said J-Mo is going to be a deep threat. They said how Johnny Morton is dialing him up, some big pass plays. Brian Branch said today, get your popcorn ready whenever you're talking about J-Mo, because he can do a little bit of everything. Tim Patrick said his route tree right now, it's not just the deep ball, it's the intermediate routes. He had one today, a touchdown catch. Granted, it was one-on-ones, but he had one. He ran a route, was going into the end zone, and then came back quick toward the pylon. Beautiful. I mean, that's what you want in a complete receiver, and I think that's what the Lions are hoping they drafted when they took him that high back in 2022.
I felt like he was moving towards that last year. Like they were putting him in so many different scenarios. Sometimes he was in the slot. I mean, sometimes he was in the middle of the field, just crossing routes, whatever. Or sometimes they were just throwing it to him like right off the snap and just seeing if he could make a play.
And last year we were kind of making fun of Ben at this point in training camp because he was like, I think that Jameson Williams is going to have a bigger year than Amon-Ra St. Brown. I was reading online. There's some people who think that with all the talk that J-Mo might be wide receiver 1, I think number 14 might have something to say about that, because you cannot forget who the go-to guy in this offense is. Another guy on offense who looked really good today in one-on-one, like a tackling drill, was Sam Laporta. Shaking people out of their shoes.
We forget. I mean,
David
we forget
Montgomery
about
too.
him.
Those two.
And Laporta had a quiet
year last
portion
year.
Of the season. I mean, he came alive near the end, but in some of those big games had some big plays, but he wasn't a huge part of the offense last season for most of the season. So it'll be interesting to see it. And he had that injury too in the previous playoff. So I feel like he's kind of the forgotten guy in that offense for sure.
Could be, but here's Johnny Mo on what J-Mo has been able to do so far in training camp.
Well, you've seen the skill set. He's very explosive. And this is year, 3 or 4? He's gotten better every year. He's matured. It's tough for a young receiver to come in this league because they don't run a lot of different routes in college. And now he's progressed through. And I want to take that skill set and now isolate him. And I think he's been phenomenal. Again, we're still scripting. We're giving the young guys more reps to get them prepared for the preseason. But I'm very excited where he's at right now. He's going to help us win some big games, obviously.
Wow. Words of praise about Jameson Williams right there, who Tim Patrick said today could be unstoppable.
Okay. All right. So
is this where you're pumping the brakes on the hype train?
No. All I'm saying is I feel like for the last 3 years we've come into the new line season on the Jameson Williams hype train. It's almost like it just.
Well,
it's
2 years ago he got his first training camp and was still hurt.
Okay, but listen, it's turning into the Mickey's in the best shape of his life spring training. Like every single Lions offseason. J-Mo, watch out. J-Mo's about to have this big season.
Do you not believe it though?
It's not that I don't believe it. I just just do it then, man.
Yeah.
just
they gotta play the games.
I get it. I'm just saying he's been better every year. I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying that every offseason we get this J-Mo's about to blow up narrative.
But 1,000 yards last year.
How many more seasons is he going to blow up?
Jameson Williams could have the exact same stats this year as last year, and I would take that. I think
totally.
He doesn't need to get any better to be a useful player. If he is getting better, great. Maybe he could be wide receiver 1. It sounds to me like with Laporta and Amon-Ra might be like the 5th best offensive weapon on this team by the time the opener.
Out wide.
By the time the opener comes around. But yeah, I mean, I think J-Mo was already earning more trust last year. You saw Goff going into him on like 3rd and long instead of just throwing him deep balls, and so I think that is part of the maturation. And I think that we're all expecting him to have a good year. But I'll take the over on Amon-Ra. I still think that he's going to be the guy.
You're not there yet.
No,
I'm not there yet. I don't know if that day will ever come, but
it's going to be tough.
This year.
Yeah,
it will be tough.
It won't be this preseason.
It won't be this preseason. My third takeaway: Terrion Arnold. He sat out of practice a little bit, but today, oh my goodness, this guy not only can walk the walk, but he is talking the talk right now for his second year. The discussion all training camp, at least on the sidelines, has been, and in the interview process, do the Lions have the best secondary in the NFL going into this year? If number 6 plays like that, They could be on that type of trajectory. Because I think everybody's going off of the safety duo. And then, I mean, DJ Reed is good, of course, but the X factor could be Terrion. And I think we're talking breakout seasons. I mean, it's hard to quantify a breakout season for a defensive back. Like, what does that look like? Right. But whatever it is, he could be on pace for something like that.
This is the Hobie takeaway that I care about most, because if Terrion Arnold is a legit CB1, it probably erases most of the D-line concerns that we have. Because one great defensive lineman, one great pass rusher is enough if you have a really great lockdown secondary.
We can watch the guys on Detroit Sports Plus live every Monday at 2:30 right here on Local 4 Plus, or catch it after the fact on clickondetroit.com and on YouTube. Well, as we're talking about, the Lions take on Harbaugh and the Chargers tomorrow night right here on Local 4. Our coverage kicks off at 6:30 with the pregame show featuring an exclusive sit-down, or I guess it's more of a walk around with Dan Campbell. Football Night in America starts at 7 o'clock, and then we wrap up the night with Local 4 News at 11. Well, here's what we're working on in our next hour. We're going to keep an eye on the West Coast, Hawaii, Russia, Japan, after a major earthquake is triggering tsunamis. Brand new information into our newsroom about those threats. Then, concerns about funding cuts that could impact the Great Lakes. A conversation about how it could affect shipping and tourism. And today marks 50 years since Jimmy Hoffa mysteriously disappeared. We're going to talk about the new theories and what happened as Local 4 gets ready to roll out a brand new documentary on that case. Much more coming up on Local 4 Live in just a minute as you're looking live in Belleville.
Local 4 News starts now with a breaking news alert.
We are staying on top of that breaking news. A massive earthquake starting near Russia has triggered tsunami waves from Japan to Hawaii up and down the west coast. This is video from Japan where more than 2 million people being evacuated. Waves as high as 4 feet are hitting the country's east Coast. New video from this morning also showing the damage in Russia after the 8.8 magnitude earthquake that hit the country's remote Far East. This is one of the most powerful earthquakes ever recorded. Waves in Russia are ranging from 10 to 13 feet high, according to state media out there. Now, this, of course, sparking concerns in Hawaii as the West Coast, and we take you live to San Francisco, where a tsunami wave of 3.6 feet was recorded in Crescent City, that is in Northern California. A tsunami advisory is in effect for the entire California coast. And now to Hawaii. This is San Francisco here. We'll go to Hawaii in a moment for a live look at Waikiki Beach. The tsunami threat was downgraded to an advisory overnight. Officials saying the state is past the worst of this and is unlikely to see any impacts bigger than they have already seen. Right now, we're hearing from experts about just how harsh these waves can be.
The traveling speed of a tsunami pretty much is controlled by the water depths of the ocean, which we say bathymetry, and they travel around like 700 kilometers per hour, which is like jet plane. And it's usually very small in the deep ocean. It's pretty quiet in the deep ocean, but once the tsunami wave reach the shallow water, and then the energy release will be in the forms of wave height, and the water will pile up and cause severe damage along the coastline.
Now, while some residents have been permitted to go back to their homes, many were told yesterday to evacuate. Here's a time lapse from yesterday showing heavy traffic jams next to a marina in downtown Honolulu. While evacuation orders for coastal zones have also been canceled, officials say residents returning should be keeping an eye out for some damage. The governor in Hawaii, Josh Green, provided an update on what's happening out there and the warnings.
So again, you can expect a tsunami wave to hit the state, and it will not just hit one beach. It will wrap around the islands very likely, therefore causing a wave in Hilo, in Kona, and Kauai, and on Maui. You have to be safe, and please do not come back out until we give you the all clear. That will be very important. We'll be constantly updating you.
Everything has been okay so far. We haven't seen a big wave, but when that water receded in Haleiwa and we saw some boats kind of laying on the dry rock and sand, that gave us pause. That doesn't happen for no reason. When the water pulls back like that, that means there's activity in the ocean. So again, we keep our fingers crossed that we don't suffer a big tsunami. Again, people have been very thoughtful and very safe, and that's something we appreciate.
Now, earlier we had an opportunity to talk to somebody currently in Hawaii, Dr. Rose Moten, who is a clinical psychologist and director of the Bloom Transportation Center. She has been here on Local 4 many times. She's actually one of the people writing out these warnings in Hawaii. Here's part of that conversation.
We've had reports from the governor and other individuals from the tsunami center here. And even though those waves don't sound, you know, when you hear it 3 feet, 5 feet, that's not really taken into consideration the real gravity of the damage that it can cause. Fortunately, where we are, we just kept driving. I literally told my children I can feel my ears popping, so I knew we were, you know, on higher ground. We don't have any view right now of the, well, I'm looking over to the side. I can see, you know, the lights down in Maui now, but it's 11 p.m. here now. So it's, you know, it's nighttime, and I'm not able to see any water from where I am.
And we're going to keep an eye on this all day and bring you updates throughout the day on Local 4 Plus and clickondetroit.com. Well, we've been talking about so many things. We're going to keep an eye on other big stories right now. New concerns about funding cuts that could impact the Great Lakes, how it could affect everything from shipping to tourism, and we'll talk about your money with the Federal Reserve set to make a decision on interest rates today. We're going to hear from Consumer Reports about the easiest ways to pay off any debt that you might have. And then that infamous disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa. If you can believe it, today marks 50 years since that Teamsters boss was last seen here in Metro Detroit. We have a new documentary we're going to premiere tonight about that case at 8 o'clock, and we're going to talk to one of the producers about the new theories into his disappearance. Which actually leads us to our question of the day. What do you think happened to Jimmy Hoffa? Send me your best theories. We might read them right here on Local 4, unless they're just crazy and outlandish like all of Michelle's theories. You can weigh in by scanning the QR code on your screen or head to clickondetroit.com/vote. Now to your headlines and a breaking news update. We just got into our newsroom. We have learned that the 2 people killed were in the vehicle when it crashed into a building on Gratiot near French Road. Another person in critical condition, another in stable. So a total of 4 were in that car when it crashed into a building. It happened on Gratiot near French on Detroit's east side. Police say the car was speeding before that crash. New York honoring lives lost after a gunman opened fire inside of a Manhattan high-rise Monday night. People gathered in the heart of New York City to remember the victims of that shooting that claimed 4 lives. The multi-faith prayer vigil was an opportunity for religious and city leaders as well as New Yorkers to come together, grieving, praying, and paying their respects to the NYPD officer and 3 civilians who were shot at 345 Park Avenue. Well, back home, today a teen will be sentenced for his role in the murder of Oakland County Deputy Bradley Reckling. Marquise Goins was charged with being an accomplice to the murder in June of 2024. 2 other teens were also charged. Yesterday, Raymond DeBose pled guilty for the deputy's murder. He's facing between 33 and 60 years in prison, but he's not going to be sentenced until August 22nd. A 3rd teen involved, Kareem Moore, is serving a 20-year sentence. Let's take a live look over the Soo Locks this morning up in Sault Ste. Marie. It's estimated more than 7,000 ships pass through the locks every year, generating billions of dollars to the economy. And those ships rely on important information about weather, water conditions, ice, water height, waves, to know when it's safe to travel and when to avoid some dangers. But proposed cuts to NOAA funding could impact that information that cargo ships rely on. Joining me this morning to talk about these proposed cuts is Eric Peace with the Lake Carriers Association. That's a group that helps cargo ships navigate the lake safely and overall helps the shipping industry. Eric, you're no stranger to the Great Lakes. You are a commander with the Coast Guard serving on 3 of the Great Lakes icebreakers, including the Mackinac. So I guess just kind of walk us through what losing this funding would mean and what information you're going to be losing.
So NOAA's mission portfolio is pretty vast, whether that's with the National Weather Service providing us information on wind, wave height, currents, things like that. But it also, there's vast amounts of data that are produced by NOAA here on the Great Lakes that we use on a daily basis. So when we're shipping from the head of the lake, so whether it's Duluth Superior, down to Gary, Indiana, or Burns Harbor, or over to Cleveland, or even to Detroit, we need to know 3 days in advance as to what those weather conditions are going to be, along with what the water levels will be, because we're loading as much as we possibly can to move efficiently and effectively across the lakes. It's a pretty important piece of information. So mariners are data hounds, and we look at everything that's possibly available to risk mitigate any kind of transits through these areas. So we're moving 80 million tons of critical raw materials here on the Great Lakes. Those 80 million tons need to move safely and effectively through our system.
So I know some of the proposed cuts are roughly $2 billion to NOAA, which again, as you mentioned, is a large agency with a lot of different programs underneath of it. But what specifically are we looking at losing in terms of the program itself? Because I've read that we're looking at the Great Lakes Observing System, which probably entails everything that you need.
Yeah, so that's probably the major issue that we're facing right now. It's a little difficult to tell by the NOAA budget exactly what will be cut, but obviously most importantly to us is, for again, those risk mitigation measures. One of the things that's produced that looks like it will possibly face a trim back on the budget would be the Great Lakes Environmental Research Lab, which produces an ice forecast for us on a daily basis, and that helps us, again, mitigate risk, especially during the wintertime when we have a lack of Coast Guard icebreakers. We know when to go, when not to go, and that ice forecast is pretty critical. One of the areas that looks like it probably will remain is the National Water Level Network. NLON stations are throughout the Great Lakes. Those stations provide water level height and current data in certain areas that allows us, again, to mitigate risk and load as deep as we possibly can. Because what happens is if we lose 1 inch of draft and not knowing what that condition is as far as the water level in that area, that can be 270 tons that we have to leave on the dock.
Oh, wow. Okay. Producer Brecken, I'd like to pull up the map that we saw earlier today provided by Siegel, which kind of lays out some of the data that you've been talking about here, Eric. So when you look at this map, or we'll get it here in a moment, but when you look at this map, what is the data that you're relying most on? Is it everything, or are there specific subsets that you're really most concerned with?
So we're relying on everything. Again, that loading in certain areas, and again, it takes 3 days to get down to the lower lakes from the upper lakes. We're relying on all of that data, whether it be the weather service, whether it be the water levels, whether it be the current meters. Out in the middle of the lake, there's several buoys in each lake. There's at least 2 big ones, which are provided by the National Data Buoy Center. The National Data Buoy Center is a critical function under NOAA. And those buoys, those large buoys out in the middle of the lake, provide us with real-time data on wave height. It also tells us what the winds are doing in those areas. And again, the Great Lakes are very dynamic, extremely dynamic when it comes down to weather forecasts. We can have hurricane force winds on Lake Superior in a matter of minutes, especially during this time of the season when you get derechos and things like that. Having that data is critical for us to make sure that we're safe and we're effectively moving our cargoes.
I read an article, because obviously you've got Coast Guard experience, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but you had mentioned that you would prefer to deal with swells in Alaska versus some of the environments that you face here on the Great Lakes. Are we that dangerous / unpredictable?
Yes, absolutely. Up in Alaska, we'd see 30-foot seas on a regular basis out in the Bering Sea. But at least you could predict those coming, and you would get a swell in between them. Here, everything's wind-driven, and it comes quickly and it moves and it rotates. So you can get winds that are blowing out of the west 1 minute at gale force, and they'll shift north, or they'll shift to the east. And that happens in a matter of minutes. And that can shift all sorts of weather conditions as far as the wave height, the direction, which impacts our ability to move the cargo, knowing what the weather conditions are out there. It's pretty critical stuff.
So I'm wondering if there could be a trickle-down effect here. If, let's say, we lose this funding and you aren't able to predict as well what conditions the ship's going to be facing, I'm assuming you'll probably have to play it safe and pull cargo off of them, which then means more shipping costs, which then I would assume eventually could trickle down to consumers on the goods that you're trying to move.
Possibly, but we're using a lot of different data. One of the things that you showed there was Siegel. That's a very complex compilation of a lot of data. It would probably just require us to look more at individual pieces of data as opposed to that consolidated Siegel map. So we would still move the cargo. I don't think there's a doubt there, but it would definitely require us to do more work to consolidate all that data and make sure that we have a safe transit plan.
Gotcha. So what kind of lobbying or conversations need to be had to make federal officials understand how vital this program is and why you really can't lose some of these data points?
So I'm not sure it's lobbying. I think I would call it education, right? I think that's the biggest problem, is that some folks don't understand exactly what we're using this data for. I think some of the cuts that are occurring at the federal level are focused on climate data. And while some of these functions that NOAA provides do provide climate data, it's an understanding that it also provides for safe navigation, which is tremendous. So, I serve with some folks on a federal advisory committee, and those folks on the Mississippi River have a very complex system as well. And that includes water levels, includes currents, and it also includes air draft of going underneath bridges, which we saw there's been issues with bridges in the past, not here on the Great Lakes, but in other locations. So those functions are very critical in educating folks in positions of the legislature as to how important those are. They may not just be one function that they're serving, whether that's climate data, but they're also serving other functions that we are using to move cargo safely.
Yeah. Eric, I know your current role right now is focusing on the Great Lakes here, but if you don't mind, I do want to pick your brain just a little bit on the earthquake and tsunami that we're dealing with right now that happened overnight out in Russia. I'm assuming, and again, please correct me if I'm wrong, that a lot of the warnings and advisories that are triggered come from data points that are collected. If we see some more federal cuts to programs like NOAA, do we then have difficulty in predicting things like tsunamis?
That's a very good possibility. I'm not exactly sure on that one, because I've only dealt with tsunamis when I was in Alaska, and those were very rare occurrences. but obviously you can see the damage that they do create. When I was stationed in Kodiak, there was a mark on the wall which was about 30 feet tall from the tsunami that occurred in the 60s. So those are very important functions of understanding what's going on with wave height, water levels, things like that. So it's a pretty critical life-saving function that they provide.
Yeah. Okay, Eric, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for trying to help us understand this, because I think this is something, especially down here in the Detroit area, that we have no clue of what you're going through up there and how vital this data is to you.
Yes, sir. It was a pleasure being with you today. Thank you.
All right, take care. Well, many people in Michigan just doing their best to make ends meet with dealing with thousands of dollars in credit card debt. So coming up, we're going to talk about what you can do if you're struggling to pay down your debt. A couple of tips and tricks when we come back. Welcome back, everybody. If credit card debt has you feeling stressed, I promise you are not alone. Many families struggling to keep up with all of it, and you can feel like you're never getting ahead. Well, Rhonda Walker has a Consumer Reports breaking down simple ways to get some relief and take back control to pay down that debt.
I started to feel the crunch when I started to use credit cards for just daily essentials.
For Jennifer Paez, more expenses and less money coming in meant one thing. She had to lean on credit cards just to stay afloat.
I knew that that was a big red flag.
Jennifer is far from alone. Americans own a combined $1.18 trillion in credit card debt, and the average balance per household is around $6,000. With many credit cards with interest rates above 20%, it's tough to make a dent. So what you can do if you're struggling to pay down your credit card debt, Consumer Reports' Lisa Gill says, try to hit pause on using your cards and look for ways to cut back on monthly spending.
Take any extra money and pay down the debt on the card with the highest interest rate. Doing that helps you save more in the long run because you're tackling the most expensive debt first.
If your credit score is in good shape, you could move your high interest balance to a card that offers 0% interest rate for the first year or so. Just try to pay it off before that period ends, or the usual high interest rates will kick back in. Try adjusting your payment dates to line up with your payday. It can make staying on top of bills a lot easier. Some credit card companies let you pick your own due date. You can set up automatic payments. That way, at least the minimum gets paid on time, and you avoid late fees. But if your debt is becoming just too much, pick up the phone and call the credit card company and explain your situation. Ask for a lowered interest rate and if they offer a hardship plan.
The credit card company may temporarily lower your interest rate, reduce your minimum payment, or even waive certain fees, usually for a few months or even up to a year.
You can also contact a reputable nonprofit credit counseling agency. They may be able to lower your interest rates and consolidate your debt into one manageable monthly payment. That's what Jennifer did. She worked with the nonprofit credit counseling agency Money Management International, which helped her take control of her debt.
They offered me a lifeline in that aspect.
Well, Consumer Report says another step that really helps is taking a few minutes each week to review your finances, see what's coming in, what's going out, and what's coming up soon. Catching issues early gives you some time to adjust before a payment is missed. Well, here's some other bad news to pass along on a Wednesday. We could see some more storms tonight Ashley tracking radar right here in southeast Michigan as you look live over Belleville. The timeline for those storms when we come back. Welcome back to Local 4 Live. Just into our newsroom, an air quality alert has just been issued for all of Metro Detroit. This is because of more smoke from Canadian wildfires. You're looking live at the Upper Peninsula because they were issued that air quality alert before we were. The alert in Metro Detroit is going to last until tomorrow night. Ashley?
Now, forewarned weather with Exact Track 4D.
One more day, just one more day with this heat and humidity, and then we finally will have some relief, though we will be contending with some rain later on today and through a good chunk of your Thursday. But even the cooler conditions that last through the weekend will not come with wet weather the entire weekend. So we're feeling much better by Friday through the weekend as that drier, less humid air mass will be building in. But in the meantime, here we go again. We have temperatures topping out in the mid to upper 80s today and feeling like low 90s when you factor in just that moisture in the air. And we have a very close eye on a system to our west that's inching eastward as the day progresses, and that brings us that rain chance. But in the meantime, it's still the western half of the U.S. dealing with a heat risk today, and much more prominent as you get south of the state line, working your way down into Florida with an extreme heat risk in portions of Florida, and then that major risk going up the eastern seaboard towards New York and Boston. And that does travel as far southwest as portions of Texas. But your forecast planner for today, we rise into the mid to upper 80s, and we'll have increasing clouds as the day goes on. So at least you're not baking in the sun as those temperatures are rising. We have a chance for a spotty kind of isolated downpour around the dinner hour, but I think our better chance for more numerous showers and storms will be after sunset. And we're going to take that into tomorrow, where that rain becomes much more widespread by early Thursday morning. So really the rain arrives late, but we're just not ruling out an evening bubble up. And you see that right here around 6:30. Hard to pinpoint that it would be exactly here with this model data, but you get the picture. Something very isolated that turns a bit more numerous by 10, 11 o'clock, and then boom, widespread by the time we get to about 5 a.m. tomorrow. Heaviest rain will likely be Washtenaw, Wayne County on south. So this likely will impact your morning drive tomorrow. So maybe set that alarm clock a couple minutes earlier, or just plan to not snooze that alarm clock. But we will have rain stretching all the way up towards the thumb region. So the rest of us in southeastern Michigan don't dodge the rain altogether. But this does start to subside a bit, becoming much lighter, more of a sprinkle or two, getting into the mid to late afternoon hours before we dry things out come Thursday evening. So it's a day game at Comerica Park, and we will likely be in the 80s with the drier weather, humid but drier, and we will be in the peak heat of the day throughout game time. More clouds increasing, but at least we dodge the rain. High temperatures, check this out, average 83, and we are falling into the upper 70s on your Thursday and Friday. So it's been some time since we talked about falling below average. I don't think most of us are complaining. It's a nice little break from the oppressive heat and humidity, and then we rebound to more of that seasonal territory heading into the weekend. But if you are heading to Canton, Ohio tomorrow, 8 o'clock kickoff for the Lions taking on the Chargers, well, we also could be dodging some showers and storms in the area. So there's the chance. Come tomorrow evening, it's going to be warm and muggy there with the lingering rain chances. 70s falling into the 60s by game's end. So hopefully that doesn't impact the game. But bringing it back close to home, we'll be in the low 80s with sunshine on your Saturday and Sunday. And then we start to tick back upward, mid 80s in the forecast for early next week.
Ashley, thank you. You might want to take a look at any ground beef you're keeping in your freezer. The secret ingredient in this Ada Valley beef that's definitely not supposed to be there. Welcome back to Local 4 Live. Check your freezers. A Michigan meat company is recalling frozen beef because it might have metal in it. We're talking about Ada Valley's fully cooked ground beef. Do not eat any meat with the packaging date of May 28th or May 30th printed on it. You can return that to the store to get your money back. Well, legacy department store chain JCPenney just signed a deal to sell more than 100 stores for $947 million. The retail chain says a Boston equity firm is buying them up. This coming after JCPenney has been working its way back from bankruptcy 5 years ago. A principal financial officer on the deal says money from the all-cash sale will go to pay JCPenney's creditors. The company, which currently has about 650 stores, was one of the largest retailers to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. The deal expected to close on September 8th. So what happened to Jimmy Hoffa? We've been talking about this for 50 years, and now there's a new theory being unveiled tonight in our Local 4 documentary on the 50th anniversary of his disappearance. And then the latest on the breaking news we've been following all morning: tsunami concerns all along the West Coast after a massive 8.8 earthquake in Russia. We just got another update. I'll tell you what that is next.
Local 4 News starts now with a breaking news alert.
Welcome back to Local 4 Live. Let's get you caught up on that breaking news of the morning. Tsunami waves reaching the west coast after a massive earthquake in Russia. This is a live picture in Hawaii where officials thankfully say the worst there is over. The tsunami's first waves hit Russia and Japan, where nearly 2 million people have been evacuated. The 8.8 magnitude earthquake hit off of Russia's far eastern coast. It's tied for the 6th strongest ever recorded. Russia says nobody has died in this earthquake and tsunami, but we don't know about anybody getting hurt at this point. The tsunami warning is still in effect for a small part of the northern California coast, but the rest of the west coast, Hawaii and Alaska, they've all been downgraded to an advisory. Well, hey everybody, welcome back to Local 4 Live. I'm Nick Monticelli. Thank you for watching. We're going to talk about Jimmy Hoffa's disappearance in just a moment, but first let's get to some news headlines. First off the bat here, we're going to go to U of M, where a $5,000 reward is now being offered for help finding whoever damaged hundreds of peonies. Now, last month, someone cut about 250 of these at the Nichols Arboretum garden. A note was left behind referencing the war in Gaza, saying, quote, "Plant lives don't matter, human lives do. Palestinian lives deserve to be cared for more than these flowers." University police now offering a reward for information that leads to the arrest and conviction. Let's go to the stock market now and a live look at the big board opening just about a minute and a half ago. Right now, it looks like things are in the green, but again, as I say every single day, who knows what it means only 90 seconds in. All of this following a losing day on Wall Street, marking the first session of the last 7 in which the S&P 500 did not close at an all-time high. All of this coming as we're waiting on a decision from the Federal Reserve on interest rates. They are expected to hold rates steady today, despite objections from President Trump. He says the board should approve cuts or Fed Chair Jerome Powell should resign. Lower interest rates make it more affordable for Americans to borrow money, but economists say they can cause inflation. Powell says it is already a concern due to tariffs. Well, it is one of the greatest mysteries ever in Metro Detroit. Today marking 50 years since Jimmy Hoffa's infamous disappearance. The Teamsters leader was last seen in the parking lot of a Bloomfield Hills restaurant that's over on Telegraph. Now it's in Andiamo's. On July 30th, 1982, Hoffa was meeting Detroit mob enforcer Anthony Tony Giacalone and New Jersey mobster Anthony Tony Provenzano. 6 witnesses say Hoffa was seen getting into a maroon Mercury sedan and then he just vanished. In the 50 years that followed, there have been so many theories about what happened to him. So tonight at 8 o'clock, we're going to debut a new documentary on Local 4 and Local 4 Plus, diving into all of these new theories. It's an hour-long special. Here's a sneak peek.
And as somebody who was able to have direct contact without raising suspicions of Jimmy Hoffa. And so, you know, this was a tight package and needed to be further looked at and investigated, and it simply wasn't.
It was on a wire. It was the first and I think the only time that there was ever a discussion through a law enforcement undercover agent where that kind of information was available.
All right, so joining me now to talk about all of these theories that you're going to hear about and read over on clickondetroit.com, which, by the way, you can do by scanning a QR code there. Jeff Jewell, he is a photojournalist here at Local 4 and right now a producer. And we also have Scott Bernstein, who is a crime reporter. You spent much of your career following Jimmy Hoffa. You know all there is to know about this and some things that we still don't know, I would assume. What we just heard there was more about this FBI wiretap that's really coming more to light nowadays, but we still don't know the background and really who's on the tape, right?
No, we know who's on the tape.
We know who's on the tape.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you have to wait till the premiere of the backstory.
That's the tease I'm getting to here.
Yeah.
You're not going to know until 8 o'clock tonight.
But what we're getting into here with that clip was kind of just a discussion about why, where this information came from, right, and why it was maybe ignored.
Why it was kind of lie dormant for 32 years.
Can we answer that? Do you want to wait on that too?
Well, I mean, I think it isn't necessarily as bad as it looks. I know a lot of people are being.
Oh, you buried evidence, that kind of thing.
Why did the FBI sit on this? And just to defend them, the information was brought to me about 10, 15 years after it was brought to them, and I dismissed it.
Okay.
The person that we're naming as the killer was not somebody that became a focus of the investigation until 40 years into the probe. This is not a guy that is one of the quote-unquote usual suspects. There's been probably about a half dozen names since day one, back in the summer of '75, that have been put out as the top suspects, and this is not one of those people. So when he was caught on a wire back in the early '90s, admitting his role in the Hoffa kidnapping and murder, I think it was easy to dismiss it as somebody that was just bragging.
Sure.
Because that's what I did.
Yeah, yeah.
And then new developments over the last 10 to 12 years, new confidential informants of very high value, some new books written, or one book written by a Harvard law professor, and then my sourcing has put us towards this individual. And I know, again, hindsight's 20/20, and it might look like there was something missed back in '93, and maybe technically it was, but this was it looked at the time like a real shot in the dark, didn't seem at its face value to have a ton of validity.
Sure.
Over the years, over the next 20 years, it showed to have a lot of value. But at first, it didn't appear that it had value. It had value. It just didn't look that way.
And to be fair, there were many people bragging and claiming.
Yes,
to be his
right,
killer.
exactly. Right. That's to your point. That
Yes.
This looked like it fell in line with a pattern of people that either did know and were lying, or people that didn't know and were trying to interject themselves into the narrative, either for financial gain or some type of infamy.
Sure.
So yes, you're right. He was victim of past bad actors.
Right. It's the opposite of Boy Who Cried Wolf.
Right.
Everybody was crying that they killed Jimmy Hoffa. I want to talk to you too, Jeff, because this documentary is I've seen parts of it. It's just fascinating and phenomenally produced. When you started working on this, did you realize and kind of recognize how big this was going to be, or was it just kind of like a side project that you were just kind of dipping your toe into for a little bit?
Yeah, it started as a side project. I just have always been fascinated by the case and the story. And so it just kind of started that way, but then things sort of built over the years of putting it together, and then of course was eventually connected to Scott, who kind of put some of these big pieces together for us and kind of, forms the cornerstone of this. But yeah, mainly we were just trying to talk to people who, were still alive, who had some connection to Hoffa and that milieu.
What was that like, talking to people who still have these connections and are still around right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's living history.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating. And it's also fascinating because, again, a handful of the people that we talked to, in the documentary are people who have not previously talked a lot to the media or shared their stories publicly.
Or at all.
And so that was really the main appeal for me. We didn't set out to do a project that was from our end that was going to solve it. I mean, that's his job, to look into that. But we just wanted to kind of hear voices from people from that time and share their stories.
Yeah. And we had talked previously about some of our thoughts on why people are now sharing their theories. We were thinking that a lot of it's because either so much time has passed or so much of the retaliation that would come, those groups are no longer around,
Those
so
people
maybe
are
it's
dead.
safer. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I can speak for somebody that's a colleague of mine in my OG Media and Original Gangsters podcast, who's a part of a panel that I'm going around and staging a panel discussion about this. Novi Toko, former member of the Detroit Mafia, he's kept his mouth shut for 50 years.
Forever, right.
And it really wasn't until he's later in his life, time has passed, most of the people that are, that could be a danger to him are gone. And so enough time has passed where he feels like it's appropriate now to come forth and try to, give answers. I think it's a half century old, but for some people, the people that lived it, the people that have to deal with it every day, it's still very fresh.
Right there.
And you can feel the anger and the bitterness and the sadness from his loved ones that we're sitting here 50 years later. And technically, we do have answers, but officially, we don't.
Right. Okay, we're going to talk more about the answers, the theories, and I want to talk more about Hoffa's family when we come back after a short break. Welcome back to Local 4 Live. Still here with our Local 4 photojournalist Jeff Jewell and crime reporter Scott Bernstein, who spent the past 50 years or so working on Jimmy Hoffa's.
You're aging me. 20 years.
I thought it'd be fun. Okay, so the documentary again airing at 8 o'clock tonight. Are we going to walk away from this? Don't spoil it for me, but am I going to know, or is this still more theories, or is it a little bit of both?
Well, we definitely, the capstone is, Scott's presentation and new information. So, I feel like yes, but hopefully also along the way, you just feel like you've gotten to know these people a little bit and spend some time with some very colorful characters.
Sometimes that's even more fun at this point, right?
Sure. I'm confident that I've identified Jimmy Hoffa's killer. Okay. After 50 years of speculation, I'm serving you up the proverbial you, the audience that's watching Backstory, who come to our panel discussions. We're finally setting the record straight on who killed Jimmy Hoffa. And furthermore, we're telling people this is what the FBI believes.
Yeah.
This is the theory of the FBI.
That was my next question. I'm not discrediting you in any way, shape, or form, but what do the feds and the investigators say about your theory?
Well, they can't really, not really, they can't speak on an open and an active investigation. So their hands are tied in terms of, I speak to people that have been in the past involved in the investigation, people that are familiar with the investigation now. I've interviewed almost every retired FBI agent that's worked the case since 1975. And I can say definitively that in the last 10 to 12 years, the FBI has moved all of their focus in terms of who the killer is or was to this individual.
That will be named in Backstory?
Yeah, that was caught on the tape in the 90s, who we've sourced out from other people as being the killer.
Do you think investigators will ever come out and say, this is the killer? We have decided.
If they decide to shut the investigation down and call it a day and say that whether it's today, next year, 5 years, 10 years from now, then I believe they will lay out, this is what we believe happened.
Okay.
And they would name this individual. But as long as it's an open and active investigation, they're not going to say anything.
Yeah. You've been working on this for 20 years or so. You've also had an opportunity to talk to, relatives, loved ones of Hoffa himself. I'm curious, what is their perspective? How do they feel about all this? Because to the outsiders, we find this fascinating. Are they frustrated? Are they sick of the conversations?
The lack of closure, I think, is what's most painful to his children and grandchildren, and they want a gravesite that they can go visit.
Right.
And I think they are angry that we're sitting here 50 years later and you don't really have much of anything to show for it. Right. So I can sense that in listening to James P. Hoffa talk in recent days. It's not something that I think that they're through with or over or have come to terms with. I think this is something that's still very raw.
And do they get frustrated by all the conversations and all the theories and all the things that happen, or do they just want the FBI to do their investigation, or do they like the conversations?
Here's one take, and then I'll throw it over to Jeff. One of my takes was that they're not super interested in granulars. They blame a certain group of individuals who weren't the ones that pulled the trigger, and they don't care who pulled the trigger. Because in their mind, the person that pulled the trigger didn't have any issue with their father. The people that had an issue with their father were the people that contracted the man who killed him to do it.
Right, yeah. All right, so we're gonna watch this tonight. It's an hour long, right?
Yep.
How much fun has this been for you to work on this project?
Oh,
and what are our takeaways?
Yeah, I mean, it was a dream come true to get to do something like this. I mean, we got to construct it like a documentary. You know, I think it has a kind of cinematic element to it a little bit. But, you know, to your question earlier for Scott, too, about kind of just that connection. You know, he's talking about Hoffa's family, but I was fascinated. We were talking to Novi Tocco, the mobster that Scott coordinated with us, former mobster. Who had...
You gotta put the caveat in there, former mobster.
And, you know, even his kind of emotion at the end, talking about, he has a part in our special where he talks about feeling kind of regretful about the way that the Hoffa situation was handled, and he feels like it should have been handled differently. And there was a little bit even of emotion there, you know, and it just made me realize, again, that connection is real for people that lived through it, and that was fascinating. We've spent, you know, all these years, I grew up with it as a punchline.
Yeah, right, exactly,
you know?
right.
And it was just fascinating to go through this process and realize that these are real people who knew him and have these feelings and still have these feelings. Yeah, so that was interesting.
Novi comes from a part of the family, and it's a very fractured group now, 50 years removed. He comes from a slice that insists that if certain things would have been different, if certain people wouldn't have been in prison, that this wouldn't have happened. So that's why Jeff says that Novi feels like, you know, things should have been done differently. And if his uncle, if his grandfather were more involved in the decision making, it wouldn't have gone this way. That's Novi's take.
Gosh, what a fascinating conversation, you guys. Okay, so an hour-long special, Backstory, the documentary airing tonight right here on Local 4 and streaming on Local 4 Plus. You do not want to miss it. Clear out your schedule. You have nothing going on from 8 to 9 o'clock tonight. Well, if you live in Macomb County, get ready to see some planes zooming overhead. Why, next month, a military presence is going to be ramped up over at Selfridge. If you can see it out there. Here we are again on Local 4 Live. Expect to see a very large military presence around Selfridge Air National Guard Base next month. This is part of the Northern Strike 25-2 exercises involving over 7,500 troops from across the U.S. and 9 international partners. These exercises are going to focus on homeland security and defense scenarios. It's a big boost for Michigan's economy, by the way, bringing in $38 million. You're going to see a lot more traffic from aircraft from August 2nd to the 16th. Hey, Ashley.
Now, forewarned weather with Exact Track 4D.
One more day, just one more day with this heat and humidity, and then we finally will have some relief, though we will be contending with some rain later on today and through a good chunk of your Thursday. But even the cooler conditions that last through the weekend will not come with wet weather the entire weekend. So we're feeling much better by Friday through the weekend as that drier, less humid air mass will be building in. But in the meantime, here we go again. We have temperatures topping out in the mid to upper 80s today and feeling like low 90s when you factor in just that moisture in the air. And we have a very close eye on a system to our west that's inching eastward as the day progresses, and that brings us that rain chance. But in the meantime, it's still the western half of the U.S. dealing with a heat risk today, and much more prominent as you get south of the state line, working your way down into Florida with an extreme heat risk in portions of Florida, and then that major risk going up the eastern seaboard towards New York and Boston. And that does travel as far southwest as portions of Texas. But your forecast planner for today, we rise into the mid to upper 80s, and we'll have increasing clouds as the day goes on. So at least you're not baking in the sun as those temperatures are rising. We have a chance for a spotty kind of isolated downpour around the dinner hour, but I think our better chance for more numerous showers and storms will be after sunset. And we're going to take that into tomorrow, where that rain becomes much more widespread by early Thursday morning. So really the rain arrives late, but we're just not ruling out an evening bubble up. And you see that right here around 6:30. Hard to pinpoint that it would be exactly here with this model data, but you get the picture. Something very isolated that turns a bit more numerous by 10, 11 o'clock, and then boom, widespread by the time we get to about 5 a.m. tomorrow. Heaviest rain will likely be Washtenaw, Wayne County on south. So this likely will impact your morning drive tomorrow. So maybe set that alarm clock a couple minutes earlier, or just plan to not snooze that alarm clock. But we will have rain stretching all the way up towards the thumb region. So the rest of us in southeastern Michigan don't dodge the rain altogether. But this does start to subside a bit, becoming much lighter, more of a sprinkle or two, getting into the mid to late afternoon hours before we dry things out come Thursday evening. So it's a day game at Comerica Park, and we will likely be in the 80s with the drier weather, humid but drier, and we will be in the peak heat of the day throughout game time. More clouds increasing, but at least we dodge the rain. High temperatures, check this out, average 83, and we are falling into the upper 70s on your Thursday and Friday. So it's been some time since we talked about falling below average. I don't think most of us are complaining. It's a nice little break from the oppressive heat and humidity, and then we rebound to more of that seasonal territory heading into the weekend. But if you are heading to Canton, Ohio tomorrow, 8 o'clock kickoff for the Lions taking on the Chargers, well, we also could be dodging some showers and storms in the area. So there's the chance come tomorrow evening. It's going to be warm and muggy there with the lingering rain chances, 70s falling into the 60s by game's end. So hopefully that doesn't impact the game. But bringing it back close to home, we'll be in the low 80s with sunshine on your Saturday and Sunday. And then we start to tick back upward, mid 80s in the forecast for early next week.
Ashley, thank you so much. It is that time of the show. We're going to check in with Tati from Live the D to see what's happening on their show when we come back. So much more to come here on Local 4 throughout the day. Kim and Tati are part of the show, but Kim, she's still home with a brand new baby.
She sure is.
So Tati is rolling solo, except you've got a lot of great guest hosts, which you're kind of used to.
I am kind of used to it. You know what I mean? They come in, they have a really good time.
Yeah.
Want it to be, a good experience for them, but ready for Kim to get back.
How was the food yesterday?
It was phenomenal.
I missed out yet again.
Frida Batidos, they have a location right here on Columbia Street, downtown Detroit.
Yeah.
So you can check them out.
Okay.
Cuban-inspired street food. Really good.
Yeah.
Really good.
A little spice or just right?
Just right.
Okay.
Do you like spice?
I don't do spice very well.
Okay, so
I have
then you're
problems
good.
with spice. Yeah.
You're good. You'll
My
like your
tummy
stuff.
disagrees. Yeah. Oh, what do you got today?
So we have a jam-packed show. One of the things that we're going to be talking about is performers.
Yeah.
Specifically Justin Timberlake, others like Mary J. Blige, who get on stage and don't sing.
Wait, what?
So imagine he gets on stage and he's like, come on, everybody, sing the song. And putting the mic toward the audience, and everybody else sings.
Oh, see, that's it. Like, I paid to hear you sing, buddy.
That's right. So that's a big controversy that's on the internet right now. Social media is just flooded with comments like, what is he doing? And we've got...
Like, is that a lot of the concert?
A lot of the concert.
Really?
It really is. So we're going to talk about it today. So in my opinion, I think a lot of these singers are tired.
Well, yeah, but we're paying enough.
We are paying enough.
I paid you to sing. You better sing.
Drink some electrolytes and get on it. So that's one of the big talkers. Another thing we're talking about is, listen, we give Gen Z a lot of flack, right?
Yeah.
Especially in the workplace. But now there's something that CEOs are doing that is very, very parallel to what Gen Z is doing.
What's this?
It's called CEO hopping. So they jump from one job to the other. And they're actually, the phrase has been coined as CEO gig economy. You're like, what is this? We're going to talk about it on Live in the D.
More.
Absolutely.
And can I partake? Can I CEO hop?
I wish, especially with those salaries.
Tati, thank you so much. Live in the D starts in about an hour, 2 minutes and 30 seconds from now. Much more news on Local 4 later on today. Click on Detroit.com and always live there and on Local 4 Plus. Make it a great Wednesday, everybody.